Janelle Anderson is an entrepreneur who's really known for building or for helping people build a strong connection with their clients. And she talks a lot about, well, she helps, I just said helps again. People hire her. Coaches and consultants hire Janelle to help them speak with confidence, to help them deliver their story with confidence, and to speak confidently on stage. And what she's going to talk with us about right now is just, it's so important. And it's also probably one of the hardest things that we as entrepreneurs have to do. And that's telling our why story. Why are we doing what we're doing? And we know, and we think it should be obvious, well, I'm doing this because, I want to help people and I want to change something and I want to accomplish something. But why are we doing it? I often use the example of a health coach. You find a health coach on LinkedIn and you need to work on your health. You're really interested in improving your health and living a fuller life. And this person, talks about, I was born lucky. I got the right genes. I've never had to worry about my health. I'm 75 years old and I still play 3 sets of tennis every week. And I run circles around my grandchildren. Well, isn't that wonderful? And I'm really happy that you can do that. But somebody who's looking for a health coach probably is looking for someone who has at least encountered a few difficulties or a few challenges along the way, right? We want to know that this person has experienced some of this and then why they want to help us with it and why they feel that they can provide a solution for us. And Janelle is just a master of this. She is a master at how to tell your story. And that's such an important part. You've heard it all through the week, and people have talked about storytelling and the importance of story. So I'm very pleased right now to be able to welcome Janelle Anderson, who is going to talk to us about how to write our why story and why it's so important. So let me very quickly. Hey, Janelle.
Hi, Dumont.
And I am so looking forward to your talk because, we've talked before and I understand, and we know a little bit about each other and a little bit about our backgrounds and where we are in life and what we're trying to accomplish. But knowing how to tell our story as part of our brand is so, so important, but it's also hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard to do that. So I'm really looking forward to hearing about this.
Well, thanks for having me on, Dumont. This is actually one of my most favorite things to talk about is telling your story and how to do that. And, stories sell and stories captivate people's attention. We all love a good story. And so in particular, this story, I think, in my personal humble opinion, I believe your why story is the most important story you can tell because it's really kind of like, the Wizard of Oz, where Toto pulled back the curtain and we saw the real wizard was really this guy behind the curtain. People want to see you in your realness, and they want to see who you are there behind that curtain and not just who you're projecting, but they want to know you're real. And that will build loyalty, brand loyalty, like nothing else, and will just attach people to you, and create this following of people that just love you because you were open and transparent with them and shared with them your why story. So, and like you said, it can be scary. So I want to break this down for you and let everyone know that you don't have to tell all the deep, dark secrets of your life.
Oh, my goodness.
Not necessary. Okay.
Yeah, good. I was, getting ready to pull out the diary and go through those traumatic teen years,
Yes. Now, my why story does link to some trauma in my life. I don't always tell the whole story. Sometimes I refer to it. Sometimes I don't. It just kind of depends on the audience, who you're talking to, what you're talking to them about. But just knowing that your story is what's going to create that connection in a way that nothing else really can. So you can go to the next slide. Okay. In this presentation, our goal here is just to talk about 3 things: how to discover, develop, and deliver your why story. So I'm going to go through each one of those and give you some tips on how to discover your story, develop your story, and deliver your story. And just know this is really a way that your story will resonate with your ideal clients. And you were just talking about that with Steve, like your messaging to your ideal clients is so important. And when you share your why story, it resonates with them. It may not resonate with everyone, but it'll resonate with your ideal clients. And I always say, to help you build a business with heart, with that heart connection.
Mm-hmm.
So people, feel like they know you. And I really think it's key. So next slide, we're going to talk about what is a why story.
Okay.
And you may have heard, probably have heard about Simon Sinek, right? And his book. And he says, he's famous for saying, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. And so, everybody talks about knowing your why, right? Know your why in business. Why you need to know your own why. Why am I doing this? Because it helps you to keep going when things fall apart and your technology falls apart and you have crickets out there because you posted something. That stuff, like your why, knowing why you're doing what you're doing helps you to keep going through those times. But the why story is the story of your why, how you came to have that why. It's the story behind it. Not just like I could just tell people my why is because I'm passionate about helping women find their voice and speak up and make a difference in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But that isn't as powerful as if I tell the story of why I came to that, my personal journey. So it is the story that shows your motivation and your passion behind what you're doing. It's that story of in your life when you came to that and when you realized it, what happened in your life to cause you to be passionate in this area, and then stories illustrate. So that's what's so powerful about stories is instead of telling somebody something, you show it in a story. And it illustrates to them what you're saying in a way that helps them to get it. Like they just get it. It's like when we watch a movie, the actors aren't turning and telling us this is what's happening. They're just they're telling a story by being in the action, and we get it, right? It's a picture. So it also illustrates to people the values that you hold dear. Your story is tied to your values and what's important to you. And then also that narrative through which your beliefs shine. So that's really important with brand too. And attracting clients is when they understand what you believe and what your values are, then again, your ideal clients are going to feel that connection with you like nothing else. So that's really, that's in a nutshell what a why story is. And it can look very different for different people. And it may not always be the same exact story. That's another myth. I think people, think, well, it's just this one story, but there's different, I guess you could say like angles or hues or colorations to your story. Like I'm going to share a little bit today, but it's a different part of my story because we're all on a journey. And so you can share different parts of your why in different ways. And depending on where you're at, who you're talking to, what your content is. So it's really nice to understand fully your complete why story and then to be able to break it into smaller stories and have this whole story bank that you can pull out at any time. Yeah, and just share. So
yeah, we had Cindy Holbrook talking yesterday, and she talked about, and she's doing a workshop on it, how you can take one piece of content and get 100 pieces of content out of it. And wow, that is just, I have to be at that workshop. I told her I'm going to be in the front row.
Yeah, Cindy's amazing. Anything she does, I want to be there for that.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
So kind of similar with your why story, you can use different parts of it in different ways and little bits and pieces of it to create all kinds of different, posts on social media that has a piece of your story and it gives a message. And it's just so powerful to use your stories and your journey and your experiences to connect with your audience.
It's also scary though.
Yes.
I mean, there are some things that I can really be open about, but there are other things that just the thought of going there, especially, online, Just scares the heck out of me.
Yes. And it can be because you're being vulnerable. And like I said, you don't have to share what, if you're not comfortable sharing something, you don't feel like you have to. It took me years and years to even talk about my trauma story. And when I did, though, I discovered that for me, it was healing because, so it really depends on why you're scared, I think. If you're scared because you haven't processed through it yet, then I would say don't tell it publicly.
Right.
Until you've processed through it. But there could be something there that really will help you grow in confidence and help you heal from something or help you understand yourself better if you do work through it and tell it to somebody in private and sort of get a hold of it and what effect that story had on you and really understand it. So if there's a scary aspect to it, you might want to just delve into why is this so scary to me? And then the other part of being scary, it could just be that you're not used to kind of pulling back the curtain and letting people see you. But when you do even a little bit, you'll be amazed at how people just like will flock to you and connect with you. And like, oh my God, I've had webinars I've done before where I don't even see the people, they're just in the chat and I tell my story and all of a sudden the chat lights up and people are like, oh my gosh, thank you for sharing that. Now I feel like this, I definitely want to work with you. I definitely want to connect with you because I just spoke something that, let them see that I'm real like them. I've been through similar challenges. I understand where they're at. I know what it's like to be there, so there's so many reasons why. So let's go to the next slide because I think this might help. One thing I forgot to share, you can keep that slide up, but Simon Sinek also said, every business needs to motivate others to act, right? We need to motivate people to purchase, enroll, follow, in some way act. Great leaders are able to inspire people to act. Those who are able to inspire give people a sense of purpose or belonging that has little to do with any external incentive or benefit.
Interesting.
So, your external benefit might be the thing you're selling, but you want to give people, you want to inspire them to act. You want to inspire them to be motivated to take some sort of action. And often that motivation has nothing to do with what you're selling. It's those who truly lead are able to create a following of people who act not because they were swayed, but because they were inspired. So, and that's the third point here is inspire and engage. Why should you tell your why story? Well, because, and I've been talking about this, it connects. And it connects on an emotional level. And when you can connect on an emotional level, people will buy from you. They will sign up. Not because you swayed them, not because you convinced them or talked them into it, but because you inspired them through your story and your experience. And now they feel like, oh, she knows what I'm going through, or he understands. And it also helps to showcase that deeper purpose behind your work. So people understand she's not doing this just to make money. I don't want my potential clients to think I'm just trying to talk them into it because I need their money. No, I want them to understand my deeper purpose is to help them, that my passion is to help them. I want to see them get what they want. I want to see them walk in their fullness and their purpose and be confident and be out there, because to me, that's what makes this world a better place, is when everyone's walking in that, right? So that's my deeper purpose. And if I can share that through my experience and not just tell them, but show them through my story of why that means so much to me, that will inspire them and engage them, and they will follow and become clients eventually. Some people will follow you for a long time, right? And he also said, for those who are inspired, the motivation to act is deeply personal. They're willing to pay a premium price or endure inconvenience, even suffering. Those who are able to inspire well create a following of people who act for the good of the whole, not because they have to, but because they want to. So you're like creating a community around you. You're creating a movement around you. The people that follow you are so engaged with what you're doing. They feel like they're part of something bigger. They're not just buying a product or a service, but they're connected into your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
That inspires them. And there's like nothing better than that. So
Yeah.
that's another reason. Loyalty I talked about, and communicates, in a way that nothing else can, your mission and your vision and your unique value proposition. I always tell people, always be telling stories. You should have a story bank of all kinds of stories, not just your wife's story. And it also leads to better engagement, better success. If you look at the people that are very successful, coaches or consultants or just entrepreneurs, they're probably telling stories, and they're probably very good at storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why. A few years ago, I realized how powerful. Well, I was a teacher before, so I love stories anyway, and I always knew stories were powerful with kids. And as a few years ago, as an entrepreneur, I started really looking at speaking to get myself out there in front of my audience and more people instead of just one at a time. And as I delve into that, I started looking at the skill of storytelling and started learning how to tell. There's an art to telling a story. And that'll be the third D, develop. So I guess I should deliver. I guess I should get into this. So let's talk about discovering your why story. And this really is a process of introspection, self-reflection. When I'm going deeper in this, in my 3-day workshop, we spend a whole session just on this. This is, I think, something you want to go and sit with and just kind of ponder, like, what are those experiences I've had in my life? What are some of the, you can actually go to the next slide, I think. It's good. What are some of those key moments in my life where maybe a significant event happened?
Yeah.
And everything changed for me. Or, maybe there was a big challenge I had to overcome in my life somewhere. Or maybe there was a huge achievement that you're really proud of, and that changed, what you are all about and what your passion is all about. So that's one thing. So start thinking about some key moments in your life, key events in your life where something great happened, or maybe something terrible happened, something really awful happened, but you overcame it and you worked through it. And so that's one suggestion. And you could write these down if you're watching this video and go back and use this as sort of a template for you to start discovering your why story. The next one, go to the next slide, is look at your core values. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. So with key moments, you can ask yourself these 2 questions as you're thinking about those events in your life. What lessons did you learn from them? So, let's say, there was I know for me, recently my dad passed away. It was a key moment. It was a big thing, right? It was really hard. And I was the executor, and I was the one that cleaned out his house and sold his house. And I was there with him at the end, and I was there taking care of him and being there with him. I mean, he lived by himself. He was 98 and still living on his own.
Wow.
Yeah. But I was the daughter who was nearby and always checking on him. I had the closest relationship with him. When he got sick at the end, I moved in with him. I mean, it was really traumatic for me. And now that's a key moment in my life that had a big effect on me. So I can go back and look at that whole experience and start asking myself, what lessons did I learn from that? That maybe now it speaks to my why, maybe it speaks to my passion, or how did that impact any beliefs or values that you had in your life? So when you're looking at the key moments, ask yourself these 2 questions. It will help you dive more into how that event might be your why story, or how it might impact what you're doing today. Not everything that happened to you is going to be a part of your why story, but your why story is probably in some key event in your life somewhere.
Yeah, you just inspired me to go back and look at, because it is traumatic when we lose a parent, or any family member, and look back and just think about, what did I learn through that process? Yeah, very powerful.
I used this to write my chapter in last year's Game Changer book, which we are a part of, because that's what I was going through at the time, and I just wrote from that experience, what I was learning, what I was seeing as I experienced it. And I think when you can articulate things like that as you're going through things, you'll have more stories to tell. You'll also have, even if it doesn't tie in necessarily with, like, this doesn't necessarily tie in with my passion, but it's an experience I had that, my clients can relate to, because everyone goes through a loss. And then how do you as an entrepreneur manage and navigate through that and keep your business going? So I can tie it in there, so there's just so many ways to share what you're going through with the world out there, and that story can connect with people in a way that nothing else can. So
Wow. Yeah. And I really like the two questions, because it does have that impact. And one of the things that I've been talking about throughout this has been that when people have a brand, when we're building our brand, I think it's really important to stand in that brand. And by that, I mean, there are certain values that you have, that are core. They are lines in the sand. There is no way you will ever cross that line, or somebody will with you. And there are beliefs that we hold dearly that other people may not agree with. But as long as we know, and here's that word, why,
yeah.
That's powerful. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, definitely. I think, and I've heard this before, that being an entrepreneur is one of the most powerful self-development programs you could ever be in.
It's also a way to, it's a real quick way towards depression. It's a bad person.
Yeah.
At times. It's like this.
Yes, it's a roller coaster ride for sure.
Yeah, exactly.
You learn all about what makes you,
Yeah.
what you're made up of, for sure.
Yeah, and some things you didn't want to know necessarily.
Yeah. That's true. Well, you mentioned values, so that's the next slide. Is you can also find your why story in your values. What are your core values? What's most important to you, and how does that influence your decisions? I know two of my core values are freedom and truth, and that plays into why I work with women in the way that I do. And it also ties into my own experience with trauma in my earlier years, and for 30 years not being able to tell anyone about it. And then when I did step into that freedom and that truth, when I got free of all that and I understood who I truly was, like, that is a huge piece of why I feel so passionate about helping women find their own freedom and truth. So look at your core values and ask yourself, how does this play into why I do what I do? And where's the story behind that, So.
Yeah, I think if we can tell people exactly why we feel that way, or why we believe that way, and if we can do it in a way that is non-threatening, that is just telling people from our own truth, I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, definitely. And then the next thing I would say is look at your passions. That's the next slide. Identify your passions, because that's really why you're doing what you're doing. And it's so tied to your why. What do you love doing? What fires you up? What brings you joy? What motivates you to act? What gets you up in the morning? I always tell people I would be doing this for free if I could, because I'll just keep doing this because I love it. What else is there? And when you feel that way about your work, that's your passion talking. And when people see that and understand it and hear it, as you share your story and your passions shine through in that, like when I talk about my story, and I might talk about, how I felt so worthless for so long and felt like I had no voice and that nobody wanted to hear anything I had to say. And I felt like, I should just hide out behind the curtain backstage. And it just kept me playing small for so long. And then when I stepped out of it and began to see, all the value and worth that's inside of me, and I began to take action, and I began to speak up, and I started feeling this confidence, like the difference was night and day.
Yeah.
And I want all women to feel that. And so, see, I can tie in my passion to see women walk in that because of what I went through. And that will help them understand my passion more than me just saying I have this passion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense.
you want me to go to the next slide?
Yep. And we'll go through these kind of fast. You can also reflect on your strengths and your skills. What are you naturally good at? How can you use them to make a positive impact? That might be a part of your why story, the things you've become really good at, things you're naturally good at. And then, so then go to the next one. So now what you want to do when you've done this deep dive into who you are, you can start connecting the dots. Look for patterns and connections and how do they all fit together into a story. Also asking yourself, like, what is the main story underneath my values and my passions and my strengths and those life events, and see if you can find a common thread that ties to one main story of your life of why you're now doing what you're doing. And of course, you don't want to tell the entire story. I'll share with you some techniques of how to tell a quick little story, because you don't want to tell an entire timeline of your whole entire life. You'll lose people's attention. But for you to know, what all that means. And then you use the story structure to dive in and pull something out to tell the story in a way that's cohesive, in a way that's short and to the point, but also compelling. Okay. So, all right. So let's talk about developing your why story. So I'm going to dive a little bit into key story structure. Once you've discovered your why story and you think, okay, this is the story I want to tell. How do I put it together so it makes sense for people? And so I always follow this story arc. It's very common. This next slide, 5 elements of a story. I call it my C's. My 5 C's sticky story structure, because you want your story to be sticky.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, and this is a typical story arc. You see this in movies and books and everywhere, right? It starts off with a character. The character has a problem. The character wants something and it has they have a problem. So they run into this conflict and it gets worse and worse. There's this rising action and rising tension. And when you're telling your story, you want to tell about the conflict that you had and the struggle that you had. Because if it's all roses and unicorns and tiptoeing through the tulips, people don't relate to that, because in their life they have conflict and they have struggle and they want to know that you did too. They'll connect with you because they'll be able to say, "Oh yeah, me too." And then it creates the cortisone flow in their brains, which actually makes them focus in and pay attention. When there's
I didn't know that.
Yeah, when there's conflict and problems, like in a movie, like you're like, really tied to it, and that's because cortisone is being released, when there's struggle. And then it rises up to this crisis point. Yeah. It rises up to the crisis point, right, where everything just either falls apart or it reaches the highest point of struggle, and your people are sitting there on the edge of their seat. And at that point, there's a decision that has to be made. The character has to make a decision. What am I going to do? And then it steps into the change, which is falling action, because now the character is taking action to solve the problem, or maybe somebody comes along to help them and they are starting to work things out. And you want to tell that part too, like what happened in that change? What did you do to come to the conclusion? And the conclusion would be where you're at now and how far you've come. And when people can see that transformation from the beginning all the way through to the end, then they can look at you and say, wow, if she went through that and now she's doing this, I want the same thing. I want that same solution. And she knows how to get me there because she's been there, or he knows how to help me because he has walked through it. And now he's on the other side. So you've got to have the whole arc in there in order for it to be a compelling story that captivates people's attention.
Okay.
And let's see. I want to make sure I'm not. So I wanted to give an example story that follows.
Did I jump to part 2 ahead?
Oh no, this is okay. This is okay. It's the same thing. Is character, the conflict, crisis point, what changed, conclusion, just in a different format. And so look at this as I tell you a quick story and see if you can see it fitting into this structure. And this is tied to my why I became a coach, and the conflict I had making that decision. So I'm standing in my office at the Women's Center at Virginia Tech, looking out the window, lost in thought. Inside, I am wrestling with this inner voice that worn out old story that I've told myself for years. You can't do that. You're too old. You don't have enough talent or skill. You don't know enough to do that. You're crazy to even be thinking about this. I had been on a quest for several years to find something meaningful to do with my life, with the rest of my life. I was 61 years old that day, feeling restless and bored with my job as office manager, and I wanted more. I needed more. I had just discovered coaching, and it lit me up on fire whenever I thought about becoming a coach.
Wow.
But I had been playing small for so long. My default was to just stay in my comfort zone. Don't try anything new. What if I fail? What if I can't do it? And as I wrestled with these thoughts, this incredible, strong desire to move forward was just rising up in me. And I remembered something my boss had said the day before. She was telling us about a discussion she and her husband had about whether or not they should take their kids to Disney World or whether they should wait till next summer. They wondered if the timing was right. And my boss says to her husband, "If not now, when?"
Oh.
The kids are getting older, and who knows what next year might bring. If not now, when? And those words were ringing in my heart. And I stood there in that office today, and that came back to me, and I thought, if not now, when? When will I do this? I'm 61. But life's going by really fast. And those words just melted my resistance and fear. Suddenly I knew, okay, this is the perfect time. I'm going to do this. I'm going to move forward. So I enrolled in a coach training program, and I started my business. And yes, there were lots and lots of struggles along the way, lots of self-doubts and fears rising up. But I knew one thing was true. I was called to do this. My passion to help women step into their purpose and to know who they are and to find their voice, it just kept me going. And I knew how my own self-doubt and fears had held me back for more than 30 years. So I knew when I said yes to myself and my dreams, then doors started opening up, confidence started growing, and I started having an impact. So now I want that for other women, so I can help them get there too. I'm now 70 years, 9 years into my business, 70 years old, 9 years into my business. I'm fulfilling my purpose. I'm living a life I love. And my passion is to see other women do that too. So there's just an example.
Yeah, I love
It's a
that.
life story, right? And it covers all the arc, but it also can relate to my audience if I'm speaking to women, especially women wanting to be coaches. I'm running into the same problem. So the next step is to craft your why story statement. So this is really something you could use in your elevator pitch or when you're meeting somebody for the first time. It helps you too to just kind of make it concise and clear once you know your story. So an example from that story I just told you, my statement might be, you always have a choice. When you choose to say yes to you, your life will change and you will change the life of others. When we believe in ourselves, we see the potential within us, we dare to step out into our purpose, we will have a powerful impact in the world. I help women do that.
That's great.
So, you can work on this after you've developed your story, but I would say to find your story first, fit it into that arc, and then think about a statement that kind of just really encapsulates. And then you've got solid ground to stand on, and you can start to share it because now you know it and you feel it. So the next step would be to deliver your story.
Are we doing the next one?
Next slide. So this is, some speaking skills, some storytelling skills, because you can have an amazing story and you can know your story really well. But then if you don't know how to deliver it in a captivating way, you aren't going to have the same effect, right? So if you tell it with a lot of winding trails off here and there, and you tell like resume and timeline, you're going to lose people. And if you don't show emotion, then you're going to lose people. So I just want to share a couple of tips that really anybody can learn how to be captivating when you tell a story. There's just some basic skills, really. So you can go to the next slide. You want to look at your delivery style. You want to be authentic to who you are. You don't want to try and be somebody else. Be who you normally are, but embody the story. So your presence on the stage or on a digital platform like right here or one-on-one, be present in your story. I think one of the most powerful ways to tell a story is to go back to that, is to, first of all, pick out a moment within the story. So for that story I just told, I thought, what was the moment? Instead of telling people this long kind of high view, I could have started, there was a time in my life where I was searching for what I wanted to do next. And I was thinking about becoming a coach, and I could tell it that way, but I thought, what's the one moment I could drop into?
Yeah.
Where I made that decision, where I had the biggest struggle. And I remembered standing in that office struggling with this. So I decided to share the story from that moment and just kind of paint the scene and make it present tense. I'm standing in my office. I'm feeling this way. I'm thinking this. Instead of I was. Make it present tense, so that just brings people into the moment with you.
And I love the way that you chose a time when, I mean, it's very relatable. We've all been in that situation where, we want to make this big change, but if not now, when?
What was the catalyst? So as you develop, you discover your story, then start thinking about when you get ready to tell it, what could be a moment maybe where the catalyst moment or the moment of decision, what was happening in that moment, and drop us into the story as if it's happening right now, and show the emotion that you were feeling in that moment, either with body language or tone of voice or the words you choose, and just like, I was so like listening to this thing in my mind saying, you can't do this. Like, what were you feeling? And then, the whole, if not now, when, what was I feeling when I made the decision, I made the change? Like, let your emotions come through. If you put yourself into that moment and let yourself go back there and feel what you were feeling, it's pretty easy then to share the emotions with people from a real felt experience rather than in your head, like, so be present with your story and let your body and your emotions kind of come through it. That will captivate people's attention. And like you said, if it's a situation everybody can relate to, a common situation, that's another thing. You want to try to tell your story in a way that makes it about them, not about you.
I saw one place where, I think it was, is it Donald? I can't think of his last name. The one who wrote
Miller?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think he said something very much to that effect, that as you're telling the story, you need to focus in on that one piece. And that's just so powerful, because it really does bring everybody into where we are. I love it.
It's a great technique to practice and just try, because it's not something we normally do. We normally tell stories like it's a memory, right, from our past, and we talk about it as in the past.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. That. Okay.
Yeah. It's a game changer.
It really is.
Yeah, it really, really is. The first time I told my trauma story that way was so powerful. Everybody in the room was crying, and you could feel the connection. It was amazing. And I thought, this is how you tell stories.
Yeah. It's and I'll use the word scary again. And I think that's because none of us, well, I'm not going to say none of us, there are probably people who do, but I think it's difficult for us to put ourselves in a position where we're vulnerable. Yeah. I'm having trouble saying my word. Vulnerable.
Say the word.
and I think of, we've always had pets, and I think of, like a cat doesn't like you to touch its stomach.
Right.
because it's vulnerable. You're
Mhm.
open and you're unprotected. And I think that, yeah, that's
Mhm. Yeah, definitely.
okay. So places you can tell your story.
Yeah.
Looks
So
like
once
just
you,
about anywhere.
yeah, and it's like I said, it's great to have it right there ready to go. You've practiced it, you put it together, you're ready to tell it. You can tell it in different ways depending on where you're at. But on a podcast, it's a great place to have your story ready, or on a summit like we're doing here. You
Mm-hmm.
can tell your story in a one-on-one conversation with a potential client. Now, you might tell it differently in these different
Mm-hmm.
places. So it's good to, practice, different versions of it. If you're in a networking meeting and you're giving your, if you're in a networking group, you often get the opportunity to do like a 10-minute presentation,
Mm-hmm.
and you want to do it in a way that the people sitting there know who to refer to you. You're not necessarily talking to your potential clients. Well, then you
Mm-hmm.
want to tell your story maybe in a different way, but always have that story ready.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're running your own group, like this woman looking at the computer. Maybe she's running her own group and she's telling her story there, or doing her own videos that she wants to,
Mm-hmm.
send out or put on social media. So there's so many places to tell your stories, to tell your story. You can tell it in writing, in blogs and emails and books, and posts on social media. The other day, I know, we talk a lot about Chat GPT. So I put a quick story in there, and I just said, here's what happened to me. Now tell it in a, redo it in a compelling
Mm-hmm.
way. And it did. It was great. It came up with this
Yeah.
really cool. So if you're not great at writing, you can use Chat GPT. Just tell your story and ask it to
Oh, and you
retell it.
know what? And you know what I've started doing? I take it from Chat GPT and I feed it into Bard,
Oh, yeah.
because Bard has all that writing capabilities. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. So there you go.
Okay.
So I think, yeah. So, okay,
Okay.
you can go to the next one. Yeah. How to leverage your story. So again, make it about them, not you. This is super important and takes a little bit of skill, because when we're telling our story and we're talking about ourselves, we often don't realize how much we're making it about us, because, it is our
Mm-hmm.
story. It's what happened to us. But if you can ask questions as you're telling the story, like, what would you have done in that situation?
Oh
Or
yeah.
how would you have handled it? Or have you ever felt that way? That's one way to
Mm-hmm.
keep it about them. Also, if
Mm-hmm.
you should always have a core message in the story, so you're telling your story, but it's not just about the story, it's about the message or what you learned that your audience now can take away from it.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
if not now, when, like maybe that's something you need to be thinking about right now. Are you holding back, stepping into the next thing? So I could have turned that around and say, if not now, when, in your life too.
Yeah.
And you can create snippets of your story using social media, reels, video stories, as I
Yeah,
just said,
that's
or
great.
emails, email video series. Like, I'm going to tell you the story over the next couple weeks.
Oh, I
Use
like that.
Yeah. And then that gets them engaged, especially if you're leading up
Sure.
to something, right, that you want to invite them to. Start
Yeah.
giving them bits of a story. People will want to open your next email because they want to know the rest
If
of the
they want to know,
story.
yeah, yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's terrific.
And always use your story in your About Me section on your website, and the blog series too.
Yeah, on
Could,
LinkedIn, on Facebook,
mhm.
all
Yeah.
those places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are just
Okay.
some ideas and tips.
They're great.
And this just is, some challenges that coaches have, and people. I work with coaches mostly, but authors, speakers, entrepreneurs, that's all the same. When it comes to telling your why story, it's not having clarity about your story.
Mm-hmm.
What is my story, and what part of it should I tell, and how does it tie in? Like, so just deep dive into the things I've shared and just spend some time kind of discovering that story and
Mm-hmm.
developing it. Also, lack of storytelling skills. You can practice just the simple skills. The more the more times you practice it, videotape yourself practicing it, get feedback, share it with other people, ask them for feedback. That is like the best thing, is getting feedback. Did
Yeah.
that resonate with you? Did that make you feel anything? Like, is my message coming through? Does this make sense? Like, get feedback, and you'll hone
Mm-hmm.
it and make it even better.
Yeah.
And not knowing how to craft the story to make it compelling. So again, some of the things I shared in this will help you a lot with that, in being present tense, showing your emotion,
Mm-hmm.
stick to that moment. Don't go off on rabbit trails. Don't do a timeline.
Well,
Also,
that's
not,
mine. That's what I do. I go.
oh, people do it. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very common. Because we know what brought us there, and we think everybody else
Yeah.
needs to know, but they don't. They actually don't. I mean, when you watch a movie, they don't give you a timeline. They drop you right into the action. The guy's
That's
running from the
true.
cops or whatever, right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
later, you can tie, like in my story, I brought you into that moment in the office, and then I said I had been thinking about this. So I
Mhm.
gave you a little bit of the backstory, but I first brought you into that moment where I'm having this
Mhm.
argument in my brain, right?
Yeah. Oh, that was so powerful too.
Yeah. And then not having clarity about your core message, and then not getting that support, feedback, and accountability.
Feedback.
So those are some things you can look for help with to help you. And I do have a free offer. I don't know if you were going to talk about it, but
And
um,
no, I would love for you to talk about it because
okay.
and I didn't have the
So,
link, so I didn't have a
oh,
link.
okay. I can send that to you. Um, how to create stories that stick. It is that story structure I was sharing with you, those 5 C's. So it's a video training. It's one video and it walks you through, and you get the template as well to work with. So it's a whole like little workbook, and it walks you through how to create that, how to use the story structure to create a story and build your story bank. So you can use this over and over again. Every time you develop a story, you go back to that structure and make sure it's
Mhm.
fitting in that. And I teach you how to use that. So that's my
That's
freebie.
that's wonderful. And yes, I will send everybody who's here. I will send those links out to you tomorrow in case any of you missed them. And then we'll be visiting those in the near future. Um,
Awesome.
yeah, this is great, and I love that the 5 C's to key story structure. That's something that we can all use.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
so this has been what a great way to end the summit, Janelle, because you kind of wrapped it all up. So, the things we were talking about, so many of the people who have spoken have talked about authenticity, have talked about really understanding your core message and being able to drill down and really reflect and understand who you are. And that's a big part of this. And then the other piece that people have been talking about is how to make it more personal. Because right now, we're recovering from the pandemic, sort of. I mean, in some ways, I think we'll never recover from it. But it changed a lot of things for a lot of people. And now to be able to reach out and find new ways to invite people in and to create that relationship,
Yeah.
that because that's what I've been hearing all weekend has been people talking about, first of all, we have to understand who we are. I mean, we have to get really clear on that, but also the role of vulnerability, the role of storytelling and reaching out and listening.
Mm-hmm.
That's been another big one, ask the questions and then just listen. And that's something that I know I need practice on, and I bet a whole bunch of us do, because we are not great listeners in this day and age.
Yeah.
That doesn't tend to be rewarded. So
It's a whole
I
skill.
think, yes, I think what you're talking about is making it more intimate for the people who are receiving the message. And
Mm-hmm.
creating that it's intimacy, that sense that you are really connected, that
Yeah.
there is a relationship there, and that is so powerful.
Yeah. You can probably stop sharing. I don't think there's anything
Oh,
else.
okay.
Um,
Whoops, wrong one.
and I
Sorry.
don't know if people are live if they have any questions. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, we lots of thank yous. Made people think. That's great.
Oh, good. I like making
Listen to this from Audrey. Powerful. This is the most deep, wise story training I've been through.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah,
That makes me
yeah,
feel
Audrey,
great.
thank you for that comment. We're going to, I've been telling people I'm going to embroider pillows. I'll embroider that on a pillow for you,
Oh,
Janelle.
thank you.
So I've got a whole lot of embroidering to do.
Oh,
But,
good.
I want to, but that really is kind of, that brings me to kind of the concluding thought. Because when we are, whether we're doing embroidery or we're weaving or we're telling stories or working with clients, there are so many threads and there are so many colors, and that's what makes it so rich and so powerful, is when we can do that. And lately I've been hearing a lot of talk about why we want to be colorblind, and that to me kind of misses the point.
Yeah.
Because my feeling is that if we embrace other cultures, then we embrace the differences and the strengths and all of those things that go into it too. So it's kind of taking that and making everybody the same.
Yeah,
We're
that's
all going to be
boring.
bland. Yeah, we're all going to be the same. We're going to be the boring nation.
Yeah.
Instead of the ugly Americans, we'll be the boring Americans.
Yeah.
But
People love variety and color. I think you're right on. Like, that's what makes it richer and more enjoyable. And we learn from each other. If we're all the same, then there's nothing to learn from anybody else.
Absolutely. And what you have done here, Janelle, is you have shown us how we can take things that are so intimate, that are so, and I'm not talking about intimate like, we're we're giving away the family secrets.
Right.
But, although I have some really good ones if you want to but making it more connective. Because I think in what's happened now in this world where we're all online, that connectivity is so hard to establish.
Yeah.
It's not like we can reach out and touch each other. I mean, we talk about that, but there's a virtual hug is not the same as a real hug.
True. Very true. Yes.
So there's that piece of it, but you really kind of brought it all together and wove it all together in one piece. And I really want to thank you for that, because there have been several threads that have been running through and you just wove them together for us.
Wow.
So
Nice.
Yeah. And I really want to thank you for that. And I'm going to ask you, I've asked some other people, I'm going to be starting a new live stream called the Digital Marketing Edge. And I would love to have you come on and talk with us.
Oh, I would love that.
Yes, your insights. So thank you, Janelle. I appreciate it so much. And do we have any more questions in here? Audrey, I love your pillows. We can hug our ideas. That's great. That's great. Audrey, I'm going to have to start on yours right away. Anyway, thank you so much, Janelle. And if you will send me that link, I can get it to everyone as a follow-up. And I want to thank everybody for staying with us. And Janelle, thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate you so much. And go enjoy the rest of your Sunday evening.
I will. I'll send you that link, and I also have a VIP link. I don't know if you got that or not for the VIPs. So
no, talk about your VIP gift real quick.
Okay. It's my Why Story workshop. It's live on Zoom. It's three different workshops. So it's a series of workshops. So we dive deep into discover your why story, develop your why story, deliver your why story, and it's super fun. Great. So if you need help with that, if you're a VIP, you'll get that workshop.
Okay.
I'll send you the link for that, and when they register, they'll get the dates. I don't have dates right now, but I've done it before. Great. It's super fun. Yeah.
That's great. And I would love to do that. So I'm going to be taking you up on that. You'll be sitting in your workshop. Listen, thank you so much, Janelle. Thank you for ending things just on such a positive, wonderful note. We couldn't have had a better ending, good.
I'm glad I could wrap things up.
I'm getting the sports now, a closer. So anyway, thank you, Janelle. And
you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye.
Okay.